owners play, that landlords play. But tenants are especially vulnerable, especially during this time. And so we want to make sure that everyone is aware, is informed, and that they're taking advantage of resources available to assist them during this time of crisis.
This is a scary question to ask, but have you received any notification that someone has been locked out or have not been able to get into their home based on, an eviction at this time?
Yes. So this is something that happens even not during a pandemic. As Mr. Cervantes said, there's often bad actors, and even good laws can't eliminate all bad actors. So I think it's really important for tenants to know that the person who is authorized to evict you is the sheriff and people who work for the sheriff. So landlords are not allowed to, on their own, change the locks, throw your stuff into the street. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen. So if, and we have some tenants that have reached out to us saying, I've been locked out, my landlord changed the locks while I was gone because he said I had to get out by the end of the month based on a previous agreement or whatever. So what we're advocating is that if people are concerned that they're in that situation, there are things you can do to protect yourself. So when you leave the house, you could take your cell phone, your keys, and a recent utility bill that shows that you live there. And if your landlord changes the locks while you're gone, you pick up the phone and you call the police and you let them know, I'm waiting outside with proof that I live here, my landlord has changed the locks. And then don't engage further and wait till the police arrive. And that has been successful in some circumstances. So we just want tenants to know, and landlords too if they're watching, that they are not allowed to use what we call self-help in order to evict tenants, because the sheriff is not executing evictions right now, except for those very, very narrow exceptions where the court has determined it's a public safety issue.
Because there's some sort of criminal activity taking place in the house or something was going on?
Honestly, it really hasn't been tested because this is all very new. So we're really not sure what falls into that public safety exception, and that's why we're advising people that if you receive documents from the court, whether it's a letter saying notice of unlawful detainer, which is just another word for an eviction case, that you reach out to a legal advocate or to HCID, or preferably both, as soon as you can to try to determine what's going on in your particular situation.
And of course, protecting people from being unhoused in this scenario is priority number one, and especially in regards to this conversation. But you have taken action to protect those that before this pandemic hit were unhoused, in particular in your district, have you not?
We have, and we're going to continue doing that. We've got an obligation to serve the families, kids in our district. We're committed to doing that and making sure that individuals are aware of their rights, responsibilities, but also the resources that are here to help. And the city is a friend. It wants to be helpful.
Have you noticed citywide that there have been resources available to the unhoused that you've not seen in the past?
Yeah, there's been an unprecedented effort to lease hotels, try to get people into hotel rooms, the rec centers being taken over. But unfortunately, the homelessness crisis in Los Angeles is so massive that everywhere you go, you still see encampments. And so, as an advocate, and our team also represents people who are currently experiencing homelessness as well. We're very concerned about them, and it's very hard for us to advocate for them because of social distancing and safer at home. So we're doing the best we can via phone and email, but it's a very difficult time to be a person experiencing homelessness right now.
And also in high density population areas, the whole issue of social distancing is I would imagine very problematic, not just now, but in the future.
Well, it's very difficult. You have people who are poor, struggling, kind of working to make ends meet, sometimes working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, living in cramped corners with friends or with family. They don't have the luxury of being able to have a separate room or a separate area. And so it just exacerbates, these problems, these concerns, and these challenges. But we can't run from them. We've got to go to them and try to resolve them.
Are you saying the same with the people that you work with?
Definitely, and it was already a significant problem in our practice that people are crowded into apartments. We see 5 to 8 people living in a 2-bedroom on the regular, 4 people in a 1-bedroom. It's very common for people to be doubled up and in very cramped quarters. And that places their housing at risk because oftentimes, the landlord takes the position that you're over occupancy, you have too many occupants in your apartment, and it's now creating a health risk as well as generally just a quality of life issue when you don't really have space to live your life. But there's one sort of point that I want to emphasize, which is that this situation is dynamic. And we understand that that creates a lot of anxiety and confusion for tenants, but it also is creating a lot of opportunity for advocacy. So think about joining your local tenants union, getting together with other people in your building, talking to your neighbors, and figuring out what are the things that you can advocate for and be active in your community to benefit you and the people that you know, because it's a time of tremendous change. And we're seeing that the city council and the governor is receptive to sort of changes in business as usual. So there's some opportunity here for things to be changed for the positive for renters in Los Angeles.
We've been talking about staying, but what if somebody wants out? What if somebody wants to break their lease? They're in a year lease, a 2-year lease or something like that, and given the current circumstances, they've changed their heart and mind. Maybe they want to go back to a different part of the country. Maybe they know that even after this is over, they're not going to be able to repay the money that they're due. Are there any rights or privileges to be able to break a lease right now?
I think that's a tough question, and it's not something that has really been addressed by any of the legislation that's been passed. But I think it's definitely something to think about, and I think it's something to, see if you can work something out with your landlord, because, if the landlords have an opportunity to get someone in who can pay the rent, that could be to their advantage, but also to seek legal assistance to see, this is something that our team has done, is try to negotiate with landlords about breaking the lease. But one thing I want to emphasize is, if you don't have somewhere that is safe to go, that you can afford to live, stay in place. We see tenants who are anxious and worried, and they just want to be done with their landlord situation. They're like, I'm just going to move. I'm ready to go. I'll figure something out. That's very dangerous right now. And we don't want people to be in a situation where they don't have protections legally and they're in a precarious health situation, because we want to make sure that people are in places where they're safe and where they can actually pay their rent. So we're advising people to stay where you are unless you have a really great option B, stay in place.
And again, that's why it's important to maintain that communication with the landlord, explaining your situation, explaining what the circumstances are, maybe even referring the landlord to HCID to receive additional information or more updated information. We've got to be able to make sure people are aware of what their responsibilities are and opportunities are. But communication is very, very important. And that's why events like this hopefully will get the word out and encourage others to spread that word as well.
Well, let's end on a good word, because you've been doing some very wonderful things in your district. You've been reaching out, helping your community. So you've testing and masks. There's resources available.
Lots of resources. We're exciting. 2 weeks ago, we opened up the first testing site in South LA in CD9, a walk-up site at Kedron Mental Health. And yesterday, the mayor announced that anyone who wants to be tested can be tested. So
at what cost?
At no cost. At no cost.
That's important to say.
At no cost. They've got to sign up and to get on that list. But everyone will be welcomed. Initially, we were only testing the first responders, but now anyone that wants a test can get a test. That's important. We've been providing gloves and masks to some of our medical institutions and medical clinics. That has made a great deal. We have a feeding program for our seniors, and we're serving over the next couple of months more than 20,000 meals to seniors who are unable to go out to get their meals or unable to go to the senior center to receive their meals. So we're trying to meet individuals where they are. We mentioned the efforts at our rec centers to house those who are homeless or who have been homeless or on the verge of being homeless. Again, trying to provide some options and some opportunities and some resources. We can't do enough because there is such a great need. But I'm always enthused and encouraged by the outpouring of support, the volunteerism of our citizens, those who live in the district and those who come to the district to help. And the help is greatly appreciated and it's muchly needed.
And Silvana, it's so nice to know that there are people like you who are advocating for those who don't necessarily have the wherewithal to be able to advocate for themselves.
Well, we really appreciate our partnership with Public Counsel because they have been stepping up to the plate for a long time, not just here in CD9, not just in South LA, but really responding to those communities of need and providing the much needed legal assistance to make things happen. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And for all the tenants out there, we're here for you, and we look forward to serving you as much as we can.
All right, well, Savannah and Curran, thank you very much. Keep up the good work, and it's been a joy speaking with you, and I'm sure that a lot of people appreciate all this great information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You made my day, you made my day, you made my day,
I'm Ralph Terrazas, Fire Chief, Los Angeles City Fire Department. Every day you see our firefighters and paramedics responding to calls throughout the city of Los Angeles. But there's so much more that you don't see. That is until now, as we take you inside LAFD.
The Los Angeles International Airport is the 5th busiest airport in the world, and it's the 2nd busiest in the entire country.
This could be a significant problem for this JetBlue aircraft that is coming in for a landing. Bill.
Yeah, that's right, Mark. You're just at a low pass right now. As you can see, there is a problem with that.
Slowing down as best he can.
When an aircraft experiences an emergency at LAX, the call for help goes to the Los Angeles Fire Department Station 80 Aircraft Rescue Firefighting. Covering over 1,500 acres with 4 east-west runways, producing approximately 1,800 takeoffs and landings per day, the Los Angeles International Airport requires a vigilant, well-trained, and well-equipped emergency response system.
I'm Captain Kevin Ajitsi with the Los Angeles Fire Department. I work at Fire Station 80 on the A platoon. Task Force 80, the ARF task force, is responsible for everything that goes on with the aircrafts itself.
Okay, here we go.
Station 80 has 16 members on duty each shift, staffing 6 ARF rigs and the stair truck. 5 engineers and 1 apparatus operator handle the duties of driving and operating the ARF engines, which is no small task at LAX. First responders have the right-of-way on city streets, but not on an airport.
Actually, planes have the right-of-way. Planes would have the right-of-way. Next in line, you won't believe it, but buses. Buses have the right-of-way, and then we're third in line.
Observing right-of-way isn't the only challenge to driving on LAX. An airport at night is very different from the city streets.
Driving on the airport is a challenge, especially at night. Planes are really large. During the day you can see them, at night they almost become invisible.
While driving on LAX is unique, it isn't the biggest challenge facing ARF. Those working at Fire Station 80 agree on the single most challenging aspect of their job.
Communications.
Communications.
I believe the radios is the most difficult to learn and operate smoothly.
Radio communications is important in the fire service, but ARF is not just working with other firefighters. An entire incident hinges on getting it right.
Communications with the tower, communications with the pilots, everything is really set up to run smoothly on communications.
Driving and radio communications are not the only specialized skills needed at ARF. Operating the rigs and knowing how to handle aircraft emergencies takes continuous training to ensure both competency and compliance with FAA requirements.
So the training here at LAX is really dictated to us by the FAA. The FAA requires us to cover certain areas. It takes about 80 hours to cover all those, and then a written test. And then the FAA also requires us to do an additional 50 hours per year to maintain that ARF certification.
Training is critical because ARF rigs are different from any other apparatus in the LAFD.
The specialized equipment on an ARF apparatus is really the firefighting equipment. It's all push button. So I can activate foam, different percentages. I can activate the halotron, which is the clean agent, my dry chemical, right here by pressing the buttons here. And then we can operate the boom and the front bumper turret with these two joysticks. Yeah, another great feature of our ARF apparatus is the pump and roll feature. We don't have to come to a stop. We can pump on the fly as we're rolling on scene. Another great feature with the boom, we have a penetrator, which we can actually penetrate the interior of a fuselage and shoot water, foam, or halotron.
A unique fire engine is not the only training challenge for our firefighters. With countless variations of both commercial and private airplanes,